Welcome to the Fantasy Football Sackos podcast with your hosts, Jason Shellcross and Alex Krogh.
Let's go! Fantasy Football Sackos. Welcome to Alex Krogh's favorite podcast of the year. That's right. Much like real life, Alex is getting the good stuff out of the way in about 2 pumps here with the Tight End podcast. He's been begging for this for close to, 5 years, and now it's here. Alex, we're talking tight ends today, our tight end rankings for 2024, and I'm shocked that I acquiesced and allowed this to happen, but here we are.
You're welcome, listener. I'm here to support you. I've wanted to talk about tight ends. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And so finally we are here. Time to talk about some tight ends. So here, last year I deployed a strategy in our League of Record where I had Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce and Trey McBride. And it was kind of fun to have 2 tight ends in a flex spot. Didn't really work all that great, although I beat Jason in the 3rd place game, so it worked out okay. But figuring out how to draft or where to draft tight ends, I do think is important, and I think it's a deep position this year. And it should be noted that we were just going over our rankings again, and Jason changed every single one of his rankings to be exactly like mine the first 9. And so as he's trying not to laugh on the other side of the microphone, because it's 100% true, I'm just letting you know that any argument that he makes is complete and total bullshit because he agrees with me. So don't let him try to manipulate this podcast in any sort of way. Just know that he's full of shit like he usually is, and let's talk about some tight ends. And it should be noted, the reason why we're talking about tight ends, it's the end of July.
Look,
running backs are still
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with your rankings
because I'm right.
Because they are my rankings, okay? 1. And 2, what I disagree with is the premise of trying to entertain people for 45 minutes while talking about a position that scores less than 7 points a game.
That's not accurate. Again, you were just, so why do you do this? Okay, so there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that scored in double figures last year.
Woo!
Yeah, one of them was not Trey McBride, who should be in double figures this year.
What did they score? 10.2?
A couple of them did. Darren Waller is no longer in the league, our former guy. So we'll have to figure out another
R.I.P.
tight end to like. Kyle Pitts also was not in double figures. So I do think that this is a deeper position this year, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it and how it plays into draft strategies as we go along. So just going in from last year, Sam LaPorta was the number 1 tight end. We have him at number 1 this year. He was great. He was a rookie. 5th in targets with 120, 4th in catches with 86, 5th most yards with 889, and he had 10 touchdowns. Nobody else had more than 6 at the position.
But was he incredible, though?
No, I think he was just mediocre. I think he was good, but he
had 196 fantasy points.
Right. He had the same average as Travis Kelce, who missed 2 games. And so that's why Kelce finished in 3rd, because if Kelce would have played week 1 and played week 18, they would have basically had the same amount of points.
But what about like last year when you had Kelce and Andrews? They were just exploding every single week. How would LaPorta have finished if it was the year before?
He would have been 3rd behind Andrews and Kelce.
Okay. So was it kind of just a mediocre year for tight ends?
Well, I think Kelce's getting old, right? So
Well, I don't think that. I know that because I just looked. His birthday is in October of the year I was born. And I talk about him on a podcast playing in the NFL. And I'm person my age is 15 years removed from that.
Does Travis Kelce dye his hair too?
He might.
He might. I don't know. Just curious.
Hold on.
Feisty today.
I'm going to do some research. Please keep talking.
We'll do. So we have LaPorta at 1. That offense hasn't changed. Everybody's coming back. Goff is there. Gibbs, Montgomery, Jameson, and Amonra. So it should be the same. If you can just pencil him in for a safe 200 points, I think that's why he's 1. And I mean, he's just good. So, hey.
Okay. All right. Hold on. You tried to shit talk me about Travis Kelce dyeing his hair. The motherfucker has his own hair dyeing brand called Rewind It. Okay. And and it's real. This is not like a Photoshop thing. It is a real thing that the Wall Street Journal wrote an article on, and it's, should men ever dye their own hair? Travis Kelce seems to think so. As an ambassador for a new box dye brand, the famous footballer is giving DIY hair coloring newfound appeal. We have questions. This is from December of 2023. So yes, he dyes his damn hair just like me because he's a goddamn man. Okay?
And you didn't want to do this episode. I think this is the best one we've ever done. We're only 6 minutes in. Side note, did you see Taylor Swift in Munich?
Yeah. With people sitting out on the side of the hills.
So she's playing at Olympic Park. I believe they hosted the 1972 Olympic Games there. And so I watched Germany win. Watched Germany win the World Cup where all those people on the hill were sitting, because there was an outdoor viewing in 2014. Cool. So I was like, oh, I know exactly where that is. So it was just cool. It took me back.
Wow.
Do you have any comments on Sam LaPorta, former Iowa tight end, which automatically makes him a god?
Yeah, that's why he's my tight end 1 overall, because he's fantastic. I mean, no, he's the most complete tight end in the league. He's fantastic. The only downside to Sam LaPorta is listening to him give interviews, because it sounds like a 7-year-old child on the mic.
Really?
You've never heard his voice? Oh, you gotta. After this, you gotta. Come on, guys. We're still playing football out there. No, really? That's not Sam. I don't know what that is. But either way, yes, you need to listen to Sam LaPorta on the mic.
Okay. So Sam LaPorta is currently going at pick 22, the end of the second round. He's ranked number 1 by Fantasy Pros. He's ranked number 1 by us. Are you going to take him in round 2, Jason?
No.
I agree.
No. I mean, I think there's a great chance he's better than he was last year. Last year as a rookie, he had an unheard of, set the bar for rookie tight ends forever, or at least until somebody else comes along and outdoes what he accomplished last year. But even with him potentially getting better in year 2, I think he's going to have a little more competition in his own division this year. And honestly, I'm looking for a healthy Mark Andrews to do better.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm hoping Kelce can maybe eke out another great year. Hopefully some of those additions in that room make that room better. And then there's another young cat that we like a lot, or a couple anyway, that might be able to outdo him. So no, I'm not paying that early round value when there's guys that I think are going to finish within a couple points per game of him, if not better than him, for a few rounds.
Yeah,
later.
LaPorta also buoyed by a couple big weeks. Week 13, 9 for 140 and a touchdown. Week 15 against Denver, 5 for 56 and 3 touchdowns. So they're
yeah, but that happens, you win that week.
No, absolutely, 100%. So hopefully there's a couple more of those blowouts, like Kelce used to have on a regular basis, and he didn't last year.
Well, he still blows his hair out after he dyes it, so he's got that going for him.
Our consensus number 2 tight end, Mark Andrews. Fantasy Pros has him at 3. We have him at 2. Huge difference. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? Mark Andrews last year got dinged up in week 8 or week 9, whatever it was. It was the week before Thanksgiving because I was watching at my in-laws' house and started drinking heavily. He had the 4th highest average per game last year behind LaPorta, Kelce, and Hawkinson. The difference was 0.2 points. So basically, you can look at all those guys as the same. Again, that's LaPorta, Kelce, Hawkinson, basically all the same in half PPR per game. Again, he missed the last 7 games. Got that hip drop tackle, which is now outlawed. I still think he's Lamar's number 1 target. He's going pick 47 in Sleeper, which is the end of round 4. Jason, thoughts on Mark Andrews?
Well, truthfully, the way that this podcast is starting out, I'm just happy you didn't ask me if I also had diabetes, like Mark Andrews has diabetes. I thought I was waiting for that one.
I didn't think I knew he had diabetes. Do you have diabetes?
Oh, is that no one have goddamn diabetes? Christ. No. What kind of question is that? How are you going to ask me a personal question? No, I don't get diabetes. Are you worried that I might have diabetes? Is there a reason why you might think to ask that question? I didn't ask anything. I made a statement and then you asked. I said, wow, I'm surprised you didn't end that by asking me if I had the beatus. And then you're like, well, do you?
Diabetes.
No, Mark Andrews, he saved a woman's life on a freaking airplane.
Hero. Okay, there's the fantasy analysis for Mark Andrews.
Hashtag analysis. No. Hero. Drop the mic. Draft Mark Andrews. Don't care where he goes. Has diabetes. Also a hero. He's running full speed. He might only have 9 toes, but damn it, he's moving.
This is so stupid.
It's a tight end podcast. You wanted me to be serious? You wanted this. Here it is.
It's true. All right. Are you taking Mark Andrews? I love this. This is great.
Yeah, I'm taking all 544 yards, pal. All 544 yards he had last year. Come on now. This is number 3. I can't wait to talk about number 4.
So Mark Andrews was really good a couple years ago. We're expecting a bounce back. I think of the tight ends, he's probably the best value. Where he's going in round 4. Like maybe I could put another guy or 2 in front of him. But yeah, I mean you're definitely taking him at the end of round 4 where he's at.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, should be reminded, 2021, 107 catches, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. Not necessarily expecting him to get back to that, but should be back over 1,000 yards, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, that offense has nobody else. They still haven't figured out the receiver position there to like in any meaningful way. And then they shipped out both their running backs. Granted, they do have a 75-year-old King Henry coming back in to try and, I don't know, do his best Gus Edwards impression.
My God.
But your guy. Either way, that offense would have to try to look as bad as it did last year. So,
and they had the MVP.
Yeah, like last year, I think was his floor. 2 years ago was his ceiling. So I think I think you're looking at something kind of halfway in between, which is still a really good tight end.
Yeah, and anywhere in round 4, I'm more than happy to take him. Keeping this moving so Jason doesn't murder me after we record this. Tight end number 3 for us is Trey McBride, who you might be thinking, who the hell is Trey McBride? Because you might have checked out of fantasy at the end of last year. Trey McBride came on super strong at the end of the last year. Finished really well. So he had the 6th most targets, 106, tied for 5th most catches, 81, 7th in yards with 825, only 3 touchdowns. But when Kyler Murray came back, he was slapping.
Yeah, he was. He was good, and Zach Ertz had been good for a number of years for them. And I was, Trey McBride was highly drafted coming out of college. I think everyone was kind of waiting for him to take over for Zach Ertz. To me, it was fantastic as a dynasty roster manager of a team with Trey McBride on it. I was pumped to see Zach Ertz finally move out the way, but I'm excited to see what he actually can do in another full season now that the rookie years and the early kind of stuff is out of the way. Granted, I mean, they are a team. Like we just talked about, Mark Andrews doesn't really have much in the receiver room. The Cardinals did draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Are you worried at all about that addition kind of taking away from what McBride did last year?
Maybe a smidge, right? But he also started out super slow where he didn't have more than 5 targets the first 6 weeks of the year. Starting in week 8, his targets were 14, 5, 9, 7, 9, 9, 11, 8, 7, 6 to wrap up the year. For a tight end, it's hard to do much better than that, which, is why he had 106 targets last year. If they drop back and throw the ball 450, 500 times, like it would not at all be surprising for Trey McBride to take over, at least 20% of those targets, the way that their offense works. So also keep in mind the Arizona coach, I believe he was the defensive coach, but still they always focus on getting the ball to the tight end at least a little bit. So he's going to remain a feature of that offense. He is going 1 pick currently in front of Mark Andrews. So I do think this is probably more of a toss-up. I think Andrews is more safe. I think McBride might have, just as much as the same upside. So they're being drafted right next to each other in round 4. So if one's gone, I'd feel fine taking the other one.
Awesome. Hashtag analysis, Mr. Krogh. Moving on, our next tight end is none other than Travis Kelce, the guy that dyes his hair.
Travis Kelce was super disappointing last year. I mean, we talked 2 years ago. It was like, it doesn't matter where you are, just draft Travis Kelce because he's like the cheat code to fantasy. And he wasn't last year. He was going as a first-round pick, usually at the end of round 1. Well, middle of round 1, and then he kind of got dinged up and wasn't going to play week 1. So his stock fell a little bit. But yeah, it wasn't.
It was a hyperextended knee, right?
I think that's correct. Yeah, it happened in practice, like right before drafts were going.
September 5th is when all the news is. So just how crappy is it to go into the start of the season unhealthy? And then you miss 1 week when it could have been, it could have been 2 or 3, really. So then you only miss 1 week, you got it out. You're probably doing an injection and hopped up on painkillers. And then you're just gutting out the season at that point. The whole season.
Yeah.
So is last year, because we talked about before we started that this is the first year in like 7 years that he finished with less than 1,000 yards.
Yep.
Is last year a throwaway?
Maybe.
Is he a value now?
No, I still don't think the value's there. So he's going pick 27, a couple picks after LaPorta beginning around 3. He could he return and have 1,100 yards? Absolutely. That's 7 more yards a game, 10 more yards a game than he had last year. Like that's not unreasonable. My problem with Kelce was that even though he was dinged up at the beginning of last year, where he had the hyperextended knee, he started out the season fine, like 10. So half PPR, 10, 16, 9, 17, 16, 30, 8, and then 3, and then a bye week, and then 12, 12, 10, 11, 5, 7, 3, the last 3 weeks in the playoffs, which is kind of a killer. And I think at that point they were just trying to kind of get to the playoffs healthy, at least a little bit, and it worked. So
I think by that point it was the Pacheco show.
Yeah, it was just weird. So yeah, I mean, again, I think he's old, man. Like, for a football player, he's old. Like, not in life. Like, he's winning at life. He's got the most, like,
The most what?
I don't know, the richest significant other that you could possibly have on the planet, as a male. Is she like? Are there like more females that have more money? You want to look that up?
Oprah? I don't know.
Oprah might. Why does Oprah have so much money just from talking?
I have no idea.
You might be right. It's just weird. So yeah, we have Kelce at 4. Fantasy Pros has him at 2. He's going as the second drafted tight end on Sleeper, pick 27, round 3. It's just a little bit of a reach, and maybe he'll be great again, but he didn't finish the season, and now maybe their additions are better, right? Because they were kind of waiting for Rashee Rice to take a step forward. Kadarius Toney was terrible. They added Hollywood Brown. They added Xavier Worthy through the draft. So maybe teams aren't focusing on much as Kelce, and he gets back to his old ways. Hard to tell, but again, he's been in the league for 11 years. Like, as a tight end, that's ridiculous.
No, I can't find it. I thought I had a celebrity thing. And I think it actually, here it is. America's top 10 wealthiest female celebrities in 2024. Alex, name them.
Like women celebrities?
Wealthiest U.S. women celebrities.
Oprah.
Number 1. So your boy knows his wealthy women.
Good job.
Celebrities, anyway. 3 Billy.
It's a lot. Please play at home or as you're listening to this. Beyonce?
It's not Beyonce, it's Beyonce. And yes, she is 6th at $760 million.
Okay, I'll take Taylor Swift then.
T-Swizz, number 4, 1.3.
Oh boy.
Oprah's at 1, T-Swizz at 4, Beyonce at 6.
I'm guessing there are more musicians?
Yes, there's a mix of celebrities on here that include several more musicians, yes.
Rihanna.
Number 3, 1.4 billion. Missing number 2 so far.
Scarlett Johansson doesn't have that much money.
She's not on the list. There's a couple famous female reality star. Famous female family. Married and dated a bunch of basketball players.
Oh,
and
Kim
rappers.
Kardashian.
Number 2, 1.7 billion.
That's ridiculous.
There's another one on this list.
Chloe or Courtney?
Kylie.
Okay.
Kylie, 710 million.
Sorry, everybody, for not
the other
going
ones, I don't think
deep on Kardashians. My bad.
Yeah, you should have. I mean, they would have been great sleepers. Filling out the rest of this list. What? What?
We're good.
Filling out the rest of this list, you have Madonna at 5 overall. Judy Scheindlin, also known as Judge Judy.
Oh my God.
And Celine Dion.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Actually, that's 9. They told me there would be 10, but there's 9. That's
well, our hearts will go on, and we'll talk about number 5, which is George Kittle. We have him at 5. Fantasy Pros has him at 6. He's going pick 62 in round 6. George Kittle led the NFL at the tight end position in yards. which is kind of crazy. He was first, the only tight end over 1,000 yards, ninth most targets with 90, 10th most catches, first in yards, and tied for second with 6 touchdowns. Jason, you had Kittle on your team last year. What'd you think?
It was up and down. There was a couple games in a row where he had 2 and 3 touchdowns, and those were all of his touchdowns. And then the well dried up on the touchdowns, and there are occasional yards. Frankly, that team has too many weapons for any one of them to be, for George Kittle to be a reliable piece. However, should any of them be injured or miss any sort of, meaningful amount of time, George Kittle instantly vaults to like a top 2 guy. So if Debo is in, he's sort of like a middle of the road guy who could still hit for a banger of a game with a couple touchdowns. Or he could be invisible with like 2 catches for 30 yards.
Yeah, if they trade Ayuk, do we move him up a little bit? My guess would probably be yes.
It would be hard to, but I would want to, but I don't know how he would get over Kelce, who I know is for sure like the guy.
Yeah.
However, Kittle is a Hawkeye, so there's that.
That's true. And maybe he stays at our 5th ranking, but we'd want him to be like he'd be drafted, in the upper 50s instead of the low 60s, right?
Yeah, like he's going 20 spots behind the guys going in front of him. Like the first 4 dudes, he's going 20 spots behind him on Sleeper right now. That would certainly tighten up a full round.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah, he's always just been like a guy that like, hey, it's prime time. Like when they need a big play, they go to Kittle, but like you don't like they use him blocking a ton, and he's more than willing to do it. But again, just the fact that he led tight ends in receiving is very surprising.
Yeah, yes, it is. Next up, we have Kyle Pitts, who's sort of been a letdown. I won't say sort of. He has been a letdown. He was, pretty dynamic his first year in the league, and then has just been missing in action for the last few years. However, the Falcons have a new look offense this year. Alex, has it changed your outlook on Kyle Pitts? I mean, it must have if you have him 6 overall.
Yeah. It's hard not to, right? He had over 1,000 yards his first year. Only had 1 touchdown. And so that limited his upside. Everybody was taking him super high last year. We kind of warned everybody against that because they didn't have a quarterback and they were going to run the ball a ton. And so they still have Jean. They still have, another receiving threat, which is just fine. Like, I don't know. I don't really love Drake London all that much. And but Kirk Cousins does it for me, right? Like you talk about Hawkinson and what he was able to put together with, historical tight ends. Like how do you not love that? I don't really like Darnell Mooney. We watched him. I don't know why they gave him a big contract. He sucks. Rondale Moore is their 3rd wide receiver. So I would expect them to be checking down a ton to Bijan, throwing to Drake London, and throwing to Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, 9th most targets last year with 90, 16th most catches with 53. That's not a good percentage. I would expect that to go up considerably, both the targets and the receptions, with Kirk 11th most yards with 667. You're just kind of expecting him to get back to be close to 1,000-yard receiver this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the few tight ends that has tight end 1 overall in his range of outcomes. He's going in the 5th, 6th round. So he's definitely a good option if you swing and miss on one of the first 4 guys because you're not willing to draft him in the first 3-4 rounds. Kyle Pitts makes a great alternative selection in the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, and I feel like people are going to panic a little bit if they miss on the first 5, and he's a fine little reward. He is going in front of Kittle by 4 picks currently.
Which is fine. I don't know.
The upside starts
moving on. Yeah. Moving on, the next guy is Dalton Kincaid for Buffalo, second-year guy in Buffalo. 7th overall, currently going ahead of both Kittle and Pitts, 51 overall in the beginning of the 5th round. Fantasy Pros has him at 5. We have him at 7, just behind Kittle and Pitts. Fantasy Pros has him ahead of both of those guys. I mean, he's second-year guy, so, he's not the rookie tight end. I think, to me, I understand it. I think that there is a world where Dalton Kincaid has a higher ceiling with the loss of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis from that offense. It's kind of like, what the hell's left? And is it just Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid? Kincaid, definitely the better route runner, receiver, H-back type. Dawson Knox is capable, but not at Dalton's level. So, I'm looking for a much, a really high ceiling here from Dalton Kincaid. It's just Josh Allen had, we just talked about it in our QB rankings. What, 15? Was it 15
rushing touchdowns? Yep.
15 rushing touchdowns last year. Like, that's my red zone worry for the rest of that offense. But do you have any reservations about Dalton Kincaid? Why do you have the other two guys ahead of Dalton? Or are you rethinking it at all now that Diggs and Gavis are both gone? Davis.
So I'm not rethinking it because I had him last year and he was fine. He's like more of like a possession receiver. And I feel like they're using Knox more as like the big play guy, which you think it would be reverse, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like that. Kincaid was really good when Dawson Knox went out for those couple weeks. So Dawson Knox basically missed week 8 through week 13, the bye. And Kincaid had 15, 11, 13 and half PPR. And then he kind of slid off, right? 7, 6, 4, 0, 1. And it wasn't because Diggs was getting a lot of points. Like, their offense just changes when it gets to December. They start turning around and handing the ball off to Cook, and they rush the ball in with Allen. Like, the weather gets bad in Buffalo, and they don't. Like, it's just over. So let's look at the end of their season. So week 15 at Detroit, that should be fine. Home against New England, home against the Jets. That's not great. Like, those are going to be bad weather games that they're going to run the ball. The weeks before that, at San Francisco, at the Rams, those are okay weather-wise, but maybe not the greatest matchups. So I just get concerned at the end of the year where the Bills turn into a run-first team instead of a passing team. And Dalton Kincaid's fine, but Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, there's not a ton of people that Allen's going to throw to. So would it surprise me if Kincaid gets 1,000 yards? No. Would it surprise me if he got like 8 touchdowns? Probably not. But I like some of the other guys better. I think Pitts has a higher upside. They're playing in a dome. He has a quarterback that's proven to throw to tight ends. Purdy loves Kittle. Kittle's proven. Like, all these guys in front of them, I would say, are proven with maybe the exception of Pitts, but even still, he had over 1,000 yards once. So, like, it just kind of defaults to Kincaid's at 7.
So you're saying that there's a tier line in there probably for you?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Next up, we have tight end number 8, Evan Ingram. Do you have any strong feelings here about the Jacksonville Jaguars offense?
Yeah, he's had like a career resurgence right after the last, leaving the Giants. He was like the prodigal son that kind of never had like that huge coming out party. And then he goes down with Doug Peterson down in Jacksonville. Last year, first in targets at the tight end position, 143, first in receptions with 114, third in yards with 963, and tied for 12th with only 4 touchdowns. Comparing to 2022, he had 98 targets, 73 catches, 760 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So it's repeatable, I would say. Like, he should have 100 plus targets in that offense, which, like, their offense was so weird last year. There were so many like almost touchdowns, and they almost did it all the time. They had a ton of turnovers. So Christian Kirk's their wide receiver 1, Brian Thomas, who they drafted, is wide receiver 2, and Gabe Davis is their wide receiver 3.
Calvin Ridley, now a Tennessee Titan.
Yeah, and he just wasn't very good after his gambling disappearance. So yeah, like, I think this is just like a safe, like, I feel like Kincaid is almost like in his own tier, and then like these are just like safe guys. There's just like a whole bunch of like, okay, I missed on the top ones. I can kind of sit around and wait now for a little bit. That's kind of what I look like with Evan Ingram, but I say that, but pretty much there's 1 or 2 going every round here for a little bit. So.
Yeah, Evan Ingram is going in the 6th. He is currently the only tight end being drafted in the 6th round. So
George Kittle
right now,
is too, beginning of round 6.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, the 2 of them. Kittle at the front and Ingram on the back end. Next up, we have Jake Ferguson in Dallas. You have Michael Gallup, formally announced his retirement. Brandon Cooks. CeeDee Lamb, who's boycotting because he doesn't have a contract. What do you think it means for Jake Ferguson going into this year?
Positive. I mean, he was good last year. 102 targets, which was, let me see, 7th most.
5 touchdowns.
Yeah, 9th most receptions with 71, 700 yards receiving. That offense is going to score. So, I mean, you could do worse than the highest scoring offense. Like that's kind of what this is. I think the rest of these will go pretty quick. But like kind of all these guys are in the same little tier level, I guess. Like, hey, he's a fine tight end 2.
I was gonna say I've pretty much no longer have real strong opinions about the next guys. Like TJ Hawkinson blew up his knee at the end of the season. Probably not going to draft him. He is our tight end 10 overall. I don't know. After that, we have Cole Kmet. I mean, yeah, Caleb Williams is going to be a hell of a lot better than Justin Fields ever was. But, you know, they had a Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. So it's just going to be a better offense overall, not to mention DeAndre Swift. So there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago. I am not sure that Cole Kmet is going to be fed. So I kind of worry about that. David Njoku, I mean,
Joe Flacco's not throwing him the ball.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
That's the killer for him.
That offense is going to be worse. That offense is going to be worse with frickin' Deshaun coming back, if you can believe it. So do you just pass on all those dudes and just swing for the fences with Brock Bowers?
Maybe, and hope that the madness takes over. Whose name I'm blanking on. Your guy, the backup for Indy last year, Minshew, takes over for them. Like, maybe. So like, Njoku went absolutely crazy the week before the playoffs. 24. He had 21 against Chicago, 13 against Houston, and 14 against the Jets. That was his playoffs. He was just going nutso with Flacco. So Njoku's not my guy. Cole Kmet, he was tight end 7 last year. Again, you know, you could do, like, clearly Caleb's better, but there's just more mouths to feed there. I'd be shocked if he has 73 catches again. Hawkinson's more of like a home run swing. Like, might be a safety blanket for McCarthy once he gets in. Sam Darnold, who knows what you're getting there. Brock Bowers, rookie. Dallas Goedert. Dalton Schultz was good last year. He was tight end 11. And then you have our guy Taysom Hill, who finishes a top
tight end 10, baby.
Finishes tight end 10 last year.
How'd you leave him unranked?
It's just like he should be drafted. Like I feel like every year somebody picks him up and plays him every week because so he had 6 touchdowns last year. Well, 7 technically. He threw 1, he rushed for 4 and caught 2. So as far as tight ends go, he had the 7th most touchdowns from the tight end position. So like I think you can wait on tight end if you like Evan Ingram or Kincaid or Ferguson or Hawkinson or Kmet. I think it's really tough to spend one of those second round picks on LaPorta or Kelce. Me and Jason every year seemingly fall into, hey, love the tight end value come round 3, 4, 5, which this year is Andrews, McBride, Pitts, Kittle, Kincaid, Ingram, sort of range.
Yeah, I mean, you drafted Kelce and Andrews 1-2.
I drafted him 1-3 in round 1. Yeah, rounds 1 and 3 because I didn't think.
And now you could get them rounds 3 and 4.
Maybe. Yeah, like if like I would totally do that again. Andrew should not have been there at the end of round 3 last year. If he's sitting there in round 4 this year, I will gladly drool and take him. Which is where he's going. The end of round 4 is crazy value for what we perceive to be a top 2 tight end. So if you're telling me that, like, hey, who do you love? Like, it's Mark Andrews, it's Trey McBride, it's the upside of Pitts, it's Kittle if Ayuk gets traded, and it's Evan Ingram from like a value standpoint. And then if you want to swing to the fences late, you're sitting there like all the running backs are gone. There's not a ton of wide receiver depth there. Like, just take TJ Hawkinson in round 9 or 10. Because that offense clearly loves to get him the ball, and they have relative, like Sam Darnold, learned a lot playing for the 49ers. JJ McCarthy's going to throw to his tight end a lot. He might be a little slow at the beginning of the year, but it wouldn't surprise me for Hawkinson to be getting 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a week by the end of the season. So there's a lot of depth that you can kind of play with. And it's a fun position. So thanks for letting me talk about it, Jason.
You're welcome. This is the one and only podcast that we will have dedicated to tight ends all season. I have now appeased Alex, who hopefully returns to his shell, not to pop out and see his shadow for many more years until we have another tight ends podcast.
It's nice that there's seemingly good depth there this year, which hasn't always been the case. I feel like, hey, if you don't get one of the top 2 guys, you're kind of screwed. I think that it goes 5, 6 deep this year, which is a little more than usual.
Yeah, if I can, though, just for me personally, everyone has their own little strategies. One of my strategies, or I guess beliefs almost at this point, for fantasy football, everyone's going to have good running backs. Everyone's going to have good wide receivers. You really, in my mind, need to set yourself apart at either quarterback or tight end to really put yourself in a position to finish high. So if you do not end up with a difference maker at the tight end spot, hopefully it is because you've landed Jalen Hurts or somebody meaningful at the quarterback position. So, yes, there's a lot of dudes with, ranges of outcomes that, could include a first or top 3 finish. But if you don't end up with one of those guys and you're stuck trotting out Cole Kmet or Jake Ferguson, hopefully you're making up the points elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I feel like it's easier to find a quarterback than it is to find a tight end. Maybe last year was an exception with McBride and LaPorta emerging. But I think I would rather target tight end because quarterback's deeper. Also, it's easier to kind of control the tight end market. So like if you take 1 or 2 because you want to play one out of flex, I don't necessarily endorse that. But like if you're sitting there and you don't like anybody and you're like, you know what? hey, it's round 7. I already have Mark Andrews. I don't really like anybody here. Evan Ingram fell an extra round. Screw it. I'm just going to do it because he had 140 targets last year. Because there's probably not a wide receiver out there that's going to have 140 targets last year that you can still take in round 6. Like, that's reasonable. And then maybe you can trade him later. Or, you have, if one of them gets hurt, you still have a good tight end to play. Like, I think it's okay to do that in some situations, because quarterbacks you're going to be able to find, and then you have fab to find running backs and wide receivers at the beginning of the season. Oftentimes there isn't going to be an emerging quarterback you didn't know about or an emerging tight end you didn't know about. And so it's nice to kind of control it from the get-go.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This is the Fantasy Football Sackos. That is Alex Krog. I am Jason Shellcross. Have a great rest of your night.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Football Sackos podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter @the FF Sackos.